And welcome to another installment of our collaboration series with the Queer Food Foundation. Very excited to have you all with us today. Today's topic is mutual aid. Taking care of folks in food spaces also includes grassroots efforts of keeping our community fed. Join us, the James Beard Foundation, alongside the Queer Food Foundation, as we have a conversation to highlight the importance of mutual aid funding and being socially aware in food. I'm going to pass the mic to the worthy Vanessa Parish and have a great conversation, guys. And thanks to all who are watching and attending.
Thank you, Zoe, for that wonderful introduction. Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for spending your Monday afternoon, morning with us. My name is Vanessa Parish. I'm one of the founders of the Queer Food Foundation, and we are here in collaboration with the James Beard Foundation and also sponsored by Bento Box, which we're really grateful for, to have these amazing conversations bi-monthly. Today's focus is on mutual aid in the queer food spaces. We have an amazing moderator and panelist. Superior Murphy is also on behalf of the Queer Food Foundation. And so I'm going to let them go for it. And I hope you guys enjoy our conversation today. Please make sure you follow these amazing folks. And we will have time for a Q&A at the end if you have any riveting questions to ask.
Thank you, Vanessa. Hello, everyone. My name is Superior. I use they, them pronouns, and I am a managing strategist at Ubuntu Research and Evaluation, which is a Black-owned and operated research and consulting firm. As Vanessa said, I also sit on the board at the Queer Food Foundation. In my spare time, also run a mutual aid initiative called Mutual Aid Mondays, focused on supporting BIPOC with intersections of queerness, homelessness, and motherhood. Additionally, support community-led efforts such as community gardens and fridges. I'm really excited to be facilitating today, this conversation with y'all today. And we're gonna go ahead and get started with our panelists. So if each of you could go ahead and give us your name, your pronouns, and the organization you work with, and then top it off with telling us your favorite meal. All right, go ahead. Mario, you wanna get us started?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Mario Monte. I am with the Queer Food Foundation and I go by he, him. My pronouns are he, him. So indirectly, I work with Queer Food Foundation, but I'm also a founder of my own food and beverage brand here in Washington, D.C. So I've been in the industry, at least for food and a chef background, for over 15 years. And my favorite dish, it's got to be Italian. I'm half Italian, so I'd say pasta is the way to my heart.
Kat, go ahead.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me. My name is Kat Williams. My pronouns are he, they. I'm representing the Gro House today. I'm originally from Kingston, Jamaica, but I'm located in Los Angeles, where I run my company and do mutual aid. And my favorite meal would have to be fried lobster and festival in Jamaica at the beach. Yeah.
Amazing, thank you. Estefania?
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. My name is Estefania Orozco. My pronouns are she, her. I'm part of Veggie Mijas collective. We are a collective of women, gender nonconforming, trans, BIPOC folks, queer folks who focus on food, social, and environmental justice. I'm really happy to be here representing our team today. And my favorite meal would have to be rice and beans and some fried plátanos on the side. A classic, simple, but always a favorite.
Love it, yes, very classic. Great, so we're gonna go ahead and get started. As we begin the discussion, I think it'd be great for the audience to hear how your identity and your passion for food equity began. So go ahead, anyone can get started.
I'll go. So okay, how I started, I've been cooking since 2015, had a brief stint in culinary school, but before cooking, I was a musician full-time in Jamaica, and I toured. And so I kind of always think of myself like a kind of Clark Kent vibes in the kitchen, where I lived a double life, you know, of touring and traveling. I know I work in kitchens, but then my passion for food and mutual aid happened during the pandemic, when I just saw my own need for mutual aid. And when I received that, it inspired me to create, at first, very minimally. I was literally just trying to do like maybe 20 meals, and it just blew up from there, I guess, because of the climate we're in. So I was just really passionate and inspired from receiving my own help to help others to kind of pay it forward. And I already love food and love the experience of creating food for my community and seeing like the expressions in people's face, and and we all deserve the resources as well. So that was where mine stemmed from. It was just like my culture, and then living in LA and being exposed to a whole different like level of community as well as a queer trans person was very inspirational for me as well to help and do mutual aid. Yeah.
I can go next. I would definitely have very similar thoughts as well as Kat. The pandemic really pushed me to look outside of myself in this realm and to receive and also help. We partnered really quickly with World Central Kitchen, which is sort of like a huge, I'd say, mutual aid that exists here in the DC area, from Chef Jose Andres, who I worked for a very long time ago. And it really sparked something in me that I think I really wanted to find specific spaces, being a queer person and also owning my own business, not having that much representation in my own sort of realm, that I think it really pushed me to look for what organizations I could partner with, which is how I ended up with the Queer Food Foundation, which really has allowed me to really connect with amazing other food individuals, which I mean has been very rewarding. And even living some of the experiences, because I just started earlier this year, I'm on the advisory board. So it's really taught me a lot about, I think, mutual understanding and solidarity as a group, and how to really represent ourselves, especially in the food world. So, I mean, that's sort of how I really got started. So thanks to the pandemic. So I guess positive vibes there.
Amazing. Thank you both for sharing. Yeah, my journey, I guess, is a little different. I'm not so much in like the food industry myself. I joined Veggie Mijas after I was looking online for like a community that was aligning to, the transition that I wanted to go into a more like plant-based lifestyle. In college, I took a few like environmental classes and started to kind of like, realize the impacts of like all the systems that are kind of, messing things up. So I just wanted to learn more and kind of transition my diet a little bit. As I mentioned earlier, I'm Colombian. So like our meals are always very like heavy, like meat based. And I just wanted to kind of transition a little. So I found Veggie Mijas through Instagram, and I started just seeing like, the awesome like recipes that they were posting, kind of like having like replacements for the meat, but kind of still keeping like our cultural dishes. And I just thought that was like amazing, because I didn't want to have to give up like dishes that I grew up eating. I just wanted to like tweak them a little bit. So that's kind of how I got started. I first became like a member of Veggie Mijas, went to a few events, and then similarly during the pandemic, I had the opportunity to join as an organizer for the Philly chapter. And so that, I think the mutual aid aspect of that became a bit more important to me, something I wanted to like explore more. Philly's a very like, poor city, unfortunately. There's a lot of food insecurity as well. So just through like other organizers, I wanted to do more of like mutual aid efforts, donating to community fridges that were starting to really rise up in the city, figuring out how to do like workshops virtually for folks, whether it was like teaching them about, some type of cooking demo, or like how we can get together and do like more mutual efforts for each other, joining like a community gardening. So that was kind of my introduction a bit more into like this like plant-based lifestyle. And from there, it's like grown to, for me to be able to like be part as an organizer and a coordinator and kind of collaborate with other chapters throughout the country to continue to provide mutual aid efforts through other cities.
Great, thank you all so much. So yeah, I want to hear a bit about how each of you came into where you are now, right? So if there are people in the audience who are looking to get into food, whether that might be a more traditional trajectory or something less traditional, could you tell us a bit about your history in the food industry, just for people who are looking to better understand it?
Cool. I can go first. So I guess my formal training background, I was that kid at 10, 12, even my preteen years, that was always into food. I come from a big sort of foodie background on both sides of my family. I'm half Cuban, half Italian. So food and holidays, but I also grew up in South America, in Venezuela. So my holidays are always very interesting. So, I'm somebody who identifies incredibly well with food. So my formal training was at the Culinary Institute of America. And I did my bachelor's program and I graduated to do on culinary management. And then that sort of led me to some really interesting jobs. I worked in hotels. I also worked corporate for Whole Foods. Majority food logistics, and that's really where I really got and honed my skills, which led me to basically open up my own business. I've had up to five stores is where we're at right now. But it's really allowed me in my entire career to kind of hyper focus on things, working in hotels. I've worked in restaurants, both front and back. I'm just a person in the food, I guess, industry that wanted to see the full circle, and how everything sort of affects each other. But mostly I'd say in a restaurant setting. Hotels are just a whole different thing. But I've dabbled a bit in writing, I've dabbled a bit in there, but I think everything I've been able to tie into is majority food logistics, which is how I sort of ended up in this Queer Food Foundation. So I think what I've learned the most is how varied and how big I'd say the food world can be. But what I've also found is that the queer representation is too small. So I definitely love to play my part in making that bigger.
Great, Kat.
Okay, so how I got started, I actually went to culinary school in Philly, Estefania. So, but I think I'm more of like a hands-on chef. Like I've learned most of my experience at jobs. Like my first chef taught me, like I learned a lot in culinary school, but my first chef, Lindsay McLean at Habanero, she taught me most of what I still know now and carry with me. So I feel kind of old schoolish with my journey, and a late bloomer at the same time. Like I said, I was a musician before I was cooking, so it took me a while to kind of transition, even mentally, to say, okay, I'm a chef, like even call myself a chef. So now I'm at the point where I'm a kitchen manager at Jewel in Silver Lake here in LA. It's a vegan restaurant, really amazing menu. And I also do the Gro House, which is catering and events and pop-ups, mostly pop-ups at queer events as well. Like most of my clientele, they're from the LGBTQIA community here. So yeah, I'm just being a chef and trying to help out my community and doing the mutual aid when I can, which is difficult at times because it's strictly like crowdfunded. It's not like I'm an organization where, and I think that might be a misconception sometimes with mutual aid, where people think it's an event or it's something that's not consistently done, or it's like only done by like the big organizations. Like if you scroll through Instagram daily, I'm sure we all can see like hundreds of GoFundMes and just people, there's a culture of creating your own like mutual, like your own like go thing to say, hey, I need support kind of thing. So it's like I try to make my role in the industry be what similar to Mario as well, the representation. I'm almost always the only Black trans person at my jobs. And it's almost always Black and brown people doing mutual aid. So that's another thing that should be really highlighted as well. And I'd like to highlight through my work is that sometimes we're all we got. So it's yeah, so it's like it's inspirational, it's tough, it's worth it at the end of the day. And I love that I can transition from being creative in music to being creative with food and with community care as well. Because I don't only do I do grocery donations. I have something called the Black Joy Box, which I crowdfund for as well, where I patronize Black owned businesses and put together a care package and raffle it off on my Instagram business page, the Gro House. So that's something that's fun to do as well, to just support and give back, and just redistribute the funds. But I love doing it in LA. I love being Jamaican and doing it, being a Black trans immigrant, all of that. The representation definitely matters. And yeah, I'm very happy to be here and hear about everybody's journey as well and share.
I can also go really quickly. As I mentioned earlier, I'm not really in the food industry, so I don't have all these amazing qualifications you guys have. Definitely growing up, I feel like being in the kitchen and cooking felt a little more like a chore. It was something that I just had to do for my family. So growing up, it wasn't always a passion. I wasn't like the 10 or 11-year-old in the kitchen wanting to learn. It felt more like a chore, like I said. But then as I got older and started kind of transitioning in the food lifestyle that I wanted to have, more plant-based, that is what kind of really got me started and more passionate about learning new recipes and finding replacements and finding substitutes and sharing what I was learning and creating dishes to share with my family and be see, we don't always have to eat meat, or we can replace things sometimes. So I definitely think that finding a community that provided me the resources that I needed at the time was extremely helpful. Being part of Veggie now, I think, is amazing, because although I'm not in the food industry myself, that's something that's really at the core of our organization. Is sharing recipes, sharing resources, kind of relearning ancestral practices through food that, so much of it has been forgotten, and a lot of it, has been claimed by white veganism, and we're trying to reclaim that back and decolonize our diet. So I think through different efforts of food meal distributions, we have the Chicago chapter that has a vegan community fridge. We had one in LA that is no longer active, but was active for a really long time, and was also doing meal distributions. We collaborate with other farms and other organizations to provide free produce bags to the community when we can. So yeah, I think that regardless of being in the food industry or not, it's just it's a big tie to the community, and just ensuring that people have the same access that everyone should have.
Great, thank you all. So I'm wanting to know a bit more of how you and your communities define mutual aid, and then what you think possibly could be missing from the current understanding of mutual aid.
I can go. I think I can revisit what I was saying before, where the misunderstanding is that it's not ongoing, it should just be never ending, people don't stop needing support. I had a surge of donations when during the pandemic, when everything happened with George Floyd and all of that traumatic stuff, and there was just all these donations coming in because of that. And in one breath, I'm grateful because I got to redistribute all of that to the community through different, even just direct donations to people. So especially Black LGBTQI plus people. But I feel that's the frustrating part, is that like I stated, so I am a person who has needed mutual aid in the past, but I've taken the initiative to say, wait, if I need it and I'm resourced, there are people who are less resourced than me who definitely need it as well. But I don't think that there is that greater collective understanding of that. So for my community, I think it means we have to help each other. Like I said, we repost each other's posts. For me personally, I try and do as many grocery donations, even if it's 5 households, at a time, or so the most I've done is 30 in one weekend, like through volunteers and stuff to help me to deliver them. But I would say that's the greatest frustration for me as a mutual aid organizer, is that the misconception is that it's like a spontaneous thing or a sporadic thing that happens, and if it's just frustrating. Yeah.
Cool, I can go next. Talk a little bit about, I'd say, just Queer Food Foundation and sort of, I'd say, its mission and how much money it's raised. So in 2021, Queer Food Foundation raised 11,000. In 2022, we raised 13, also during the month of February for the fund. Obviously, donations after George Floyd was harder. And I think it all sort of stems and from that specific, what Kat brought up, from those specific moments, representation, I think, is everything. We definitely prioritize Black and trans folks first. And that's sort of what we do within the food realm, food insecurity, things that necessarily happen, and how we represent those communities and where the money goes to. We definitely put the money directly into people. I think we've definitely learned as we go, and some things that we've discussed within the group as far as, how do we go through, I'd say, like, not spam, but a lot of people is like, who's the real person? We've definitely gotten to those issues of, is it really going to the right hands? Our survey process and how it caters to people, and we want to make sure that the funds go to actual people, and who is it helping? Because we want to make sure the process isn't difficult. Getting those funds and making sure that it's going towards everyone and being supportive, I think is something that we always have at the forefront. Every meeting that we have, every opportunity that we get, and obviously growing our outreach. We just did in New York, Queer Cafeteria, which saw a huge turnout, which was great to see. A lot of food vendors, queer food vendors, which is super important. It's something that we definitely want to grow into other regions. So, I mean, at least for us, over 8,000 people showed up that day, which is much higher than we definitely anticipated. So I think it's really awesome to kind of see, at least from our standpoint, what the mission is, and what the understanding, and then there's challenges. And I think that's super important to know that it's a growing thing, and it's a learning aspect of things. So, I mean, I'd love to hear from Kat and see what she's got going on. I mean, sorry, Estefania.
Yeah, thank you both. Yeah, I think Kat and Mario said exactly it. Like, it's an ongoing thing. It's never ending. Our communities need our support at all times. With Veggie Mijas, we were able to receive grants from other organizations. And so we use that money to distribute evenly throughout our chapters for whatever different efforts and events that each chapter feels their community needs. So, for example, as I mentioned in Chicago, we were able to receive a grant, and then we started a vegan community fridge. So with that, we restock it on a weekly basis, make sure that it's like all vegan. There's also a pantry to it so that folks can also donate like dried goods, as well as, like toiletries, things like that. There's also, like, in the Philly chapter, we have a community garden plot. So that's been really amazing for like the community to come together. We have elders from the community garden that have taught us a few like workshops on like, how to best grow certain, crops, and how to best grow things. And it's amazing because it's not just a plot that we can use for the collective, for the Philly chapter. But at the end of last year, all of the harvest was like distributed among the members, but there was also a lot left that we members kind of went around the neighborhood and distributed to like different, folks in the community. Like I said, there's also been like food distribution. So actually New York City was part of the Queer Cafeteria last week, which is really exciting. We were able to get them to participate, and there was like some food sales as well, spreading the word on Veggie Mijas. But the New York City chapter has also done a lot of like food distributions. We did one last year for like the houses community around Penn Station, just giving out some more meals and care packages, toiletries. We've done a little bit of like school supply drives, some like community baby showers where we've collected like baby products to donate to a shelter. So I think one of the things that I think is maybe missing is one, that it's just never ending, but also that everyone deserves it and that there's really no like limit on how much support someone should get. There shouldn't ever be like a, you have to earn this type of thing. Like if you need it, you need it, and that's it. You know what I mean? Like, I think our society has kind of failed us in a lot of ways. And I think it's just important to never really ask questions of like, why does these people deserve this and not other people? I think everyone deserves it. And it's just extremely important to just really get to know your community and get to know what those needs are in that specific community and try to like provide resources and events and workshops and supplies and things like that based on what your community needs. So yeah, I just think it's really important to just really be connected to your community and just really know what we can provide for them if we're able to.
Kat, did you want to?
Yeah, I just wanted to add one other thing to it. I feel like Estefania is right to where it's not necessarily about being a part of the food industry, like restaurant wise as well, because there's also mutual aid where we just like exchanging services as well. Like for example, and that I think people don't even consider that. Like if you and a friend say, hey, which I'm just gonna give an example of my real life experience. So I have a friend who does my tea shop for me and I shave their head. So that's mutual aid, you know. Very queer mutual aid as well. But that's mutual aid, you know. I have another friend who's like, oh, my neighbor comes over and plays my parents' piano, and then like my dad bakes cookies or something. Like that's mutual aid. So there, if we can even start the understanding as simple as that, as like symbiosis, you know, kind of vibe, then let's just start from there and then build up to a greater like understanding of it, I think. But that's all I wanted to add.
Thank you, Kat. Yeah, I completely agree, right? That idea that mutual aid is about community, and you do for your community what you can, and they do for you when they can. And if, you know, someone's down, you pick them up. Yeah, thank you so much. I would love to hear if anyone has thoughts on a change that could be made within the food industry that could benefit mutual aid. If there's something, a system, a norm that you could change within mutual aid, within the food industry for mutual aid, what would that be?
I would say right away, donating instead of discarding food. I work somewhere and I gave away so much bread, like so much bread, because it has to be sold fresh daily. And it was like large Canberras because I didn't have the heart. I was like, it's just gonna go to the back and then not be used and then discarded because we're not gonna do anything with it. And the joy I would drop it off at a food bank on my street, and the joy in people's faces, like it's, you know what I mean? Like that's another thing to where I've literally heard people say, I'm not gonna give this away because I wouldn't eat it. And I was like, we baked this 2 days ago, you know? So yeah, I got a little sidetracked, but yeah, the donating of instead of the wasting of the food is a big issue I've seen in restaurants or even I usually put flowers or face masks or stuff in my grocery bags that I donate. And I was at Vons the other day and I just saw these huge bags of flowers and roses that they're gonna throw in trash or compost. And I'm sorry, they're doing construction outside. And I asked them about it. I was like, hey, I do mutual aid, I donate groceries, and it would be cool to just put a flower in each bag. And they're like, no, it's trash, it's garbage. I was like, these are roses, like long stem roses that like have one wilted petals, so they can't, sorry, I'll wrap up so that I can mute and close the windows. But yeah, I would say donating over waste.
Thank you. Thank you, Kat. Really quickly, I just want to go ahead and say to the attendees, if there are any questions that you have for our panelists, for me, for anyone at James Beard, anyone at Queer Food Foundation, please go ahead and put that into the chat, and we'll go ahead with the Q&A within the next 15 minutes. All right, Mario, Estefania, if you had anything to say on my last question, just about a change that you would like to see made.
Yeah, I can just say really quickly, agree 100% with Kat, like the whole discarding food. I used to also work in restaurants here in Philly, and seeing the amount of food that was also thrown away just like broke my heart. And just, yeah, it's something that I still just like baffles me that that's something we're still doing. And I know that there's like, I forget the name of it right now, but I know there's like an app or an organization that does something where like you can go to like certain restaurants and like get food for like cheaper, like things that are going to be thrown out. And I think like things like that should hopefully be more of an effort where like everyone can have access to that, not just like someone that's on an app. Because you know, if you don't have access to food, you might not have access to an app to go find the food. You know what I mean? So making those things more accessible to folks. Also, I think starting young and like schools, you know what I mean? Like having more like better education to food, healthier foods, teaching kids alternatives. I think like starting like school district and you know, having more like cooking workshops and things like that, where we're teaching kids young the importance of, you know, healthy eating, sharing with others, like taking care of others, taking care of our communities. I always think that that's something extremely important, is like teaching kids young as well.
I mean, I definitely add, at least from the business standpoint, I think if there was, or something, a change that I'd like to see, because I've definitely been approached a lot by these apps to be able to, and 9 times out of 10, they're more consistent. It's a business in and of itself. So it's not like they necessarily start off, like the app needs to be funded in a particular way. So it often does, for the business owner, mean that there needs to be a certain amount that they're saying like, all right, cool, yeah, we're gonna say 10, but the way food waste goes, sometimes it fluctuates, especially in a food establishment, that I think a system I'd love to see, and that I've seen a lot in Europe, is that it's times, and every day it fluctuates, like what is being thrown out, and it's actually going. So people are a little bit more open to having their own system of checking in on places, or for the community itself or county or wherever you are, to have sort of like what I've seen also too in New York, these community fridges, these areas where people can go, and there isn't a pressure of keeping a numbered day, because you're attaching the good work to a business. So it's almost like privatizing good work. Oftentimes for a business, it takes away the good out of, because you're signing on a contract of like, yeah, I need to provide this. And oftentimes it's like, you're only creating that food just to keep a contract, if that makes sense. And I know it's something that I wish I could see more of that change, or at least the openness, because I know oftentimes what I've seen that it gets tried, and looks are more important, meaning these fridges and what they look like and how they're maintained, it's almost people care more about that than the actual work that they do. So I'd love to be able to get more training and awareness. But that's my 2 cents.
Great, thank you. So moving on, before we get to the Q&A, I'd like to ask a few more questions as we wrap up. So if you could share one piece of advice to someone trying to enter the mutual aid space or the food industry, what would that be?
I can go first. I think what's super important is, I know passion is always thrown around as this over blanketed feeling, but I think being feeling strongly about what kind of help, even if you've been affected by it growing up, finding and understanding different ways of what's affected you and how you've gotten to today, and if there's been any help along the way. I think if you have the feeling that you want to give back, understanding and looking for how that that first door opens you up to many other doors. And I think what I'm also trying to say is also to Estefania's story is that same thing of finding your community of connection, of me trying to change something and I think that leads you to other doors. And I think that's super important to just understand and begin with one mission. And there's so many things that need help, but I think, sort of like beginning a little bit more concentrated allows it to not become sort of overcoming, because there's a lot of help that's needed. But I think it's really nice to just sort of hone in and start and then find your way through other opportunities.
I can go next. Yeah, I think definitely what I mentioned earlier, like just finding a community that you can work along with. But even if that seems too difficult at first, like I think, at least for me, when I first started, even before joining Veggie Mijas and kind of doing like different mutual aids through like friends and stuff, like I think sometimes we think like, oh, we have to give 100 bags of things, we think so big sometimes that I think it's also important to remember, like, even on our block, even on our neighborhood, like there might be neighbors that need something that needs type of support. So even if we can put together like 10 bags of produce, you know what I mean? Like it doesn't always have to be this like giant gesture, like it can be something small. There were times where with a book club that I was a part of, we would get together and collect like hygiene products to provide and to like donate to shelters, and like sometimes it would just be like 15 to 20 items altogether, but that's still something that you can like donate to a shelter. Produce bags, like there were times with my family where we would like put together like 10 to 15 bags of some food, and we would just drive around, and if we saw folks kind of looking for support, we had stuff ready at the go to give to them. So I think it's just important to like remember that you can start small, like it doesn't always have to be something huge, and then through that you can kind of like get to know like-minded people, start to build a community, start to come up with a plan, start to come up with like a focus of like, okay, maybe 1 month we might do like meals, and another month we might create like care packages. Something that actually the Seattle chapter for Veggie Mijas did last year during, or 2 years ago, when we had a lot of like protests happening, was creating like little care packages for them, just to kind of keep them safe with water, some snacks, like masks, like hand sanitizer, things like that. So it can be something really small, but something that can still like really be impactful to folks that are in need of it at the moment.
Yeah, just to add to that as well, I was also going to say start small. Don't overthink it, thinking because you're not a big organization. You can see a housing insecure person outside your apartment and just go inside and give them a few snacks and a bottle of water, something like that. And yeah, I would just say that's a big part of it, to just look like directly on social media. Like as soon as you log on, you'll see something, you'll see a means to give back or do mutual aid in some way. I would also say know your capacity as well, because that has been something that has come up for me as well, where I have this grand idea of, like Maria said, I'm passionate about my community and wanting to help, but that within itself is can be very taxing, because there's a lot of support that's needed. So I would just say know your capacity, pace yourself with how much you take on as well, and start small. Yeah.
One more thing I want to add too is, in terms of capacity, and sometimes we don't have the time, sometimes we don't have the energy, the emotional capacity, so many things. If we have the financial means, there's so many also mutual aid efforts that are like GoFundMe's and just like requests for Venmo. And if you have just $10 or whatever your means allow, like something as small as just like giving someone $20 to kind of pay their groceries for the week, like can also make such a huge impact. And sometimes like, yeah, we don't have the time to go volunteer somewhere. We don't have the time to put together care packages. But if that week we have an extra $20 that we can send someone, I think that's something super important and also a great place to start as well.
Thank you all so much. So as we close up and start moving towards our questions, I'd love to hear about things that are happening for your own organizations and your initiatives that you'd like to share and tell our audience about, as well as, entering your socials and how people can connect with you past the presentation. So if you want to go ahead and just plug some of your things going on within your communities and your initiatives, and then also put in the chat your contact information.
Yeah, I can go first. In terms of like Veggie Mijas, I'll drop our handle and our website and everything once I'm done. But some cool things that we just have going on is just, as I mentioned earlier, like if you're in Chicago, like we have like the community fridge. We have about 10 active chapters right now in the country, and then we have one chapter international. Our first international chapter is actually in India. So, there's ways to get involved, whether like, you feel like you want to join a chapter that's already active, or if you wanted to kind of like join it or start a chapter in a city where we don't have one, that's a great way to get involved. Also sharing like different events that are going on in different cities, whether it's like, fridge donations, collaborating with other organizations, doing workshops for schools. We've also collaborated and been with other organizations to provide like warm meals to like after school programs and summer camps. We've been able to do like school supply drives. So yeah, definitely just like keeping up with their social media, kind of seeing like what type of events are coming up. We also have, we've done like park cleanups, beach cleanups. We've collaborated with like, our writing team to create like resources, amazing articles with resources for folks to like get more informed. Table leg events, we try to do those often as well to kind of spread the word. Our last one for New York was at the queer cafeteria. Yeah, and just, we also have a virtual book club. So there's definitely like a lot of ways to stay involved with our collective. And yeah, we're always trying to find new ways to do more for the community, whether it's virtually, whether it's in person. So I'll drop all our handles in a second.
Cool. I mean, I guess very similar to Estefania. Best way to follow all of our work for Queer Food Foundation is through our Instagram at Queer Food Foundation. We're doing things like this, queer cafeteria, fundraisers. We did our first fundraiser during Pride, which was successful. And we partnered with a really delicious Peruvian restaurant, Llama Inn. So I think there's lots of new projects coming up. So definitely keep follow us at Queer Food Foundation.
Okay. All right, so I'm just gonna read a little bit of the bio on my website. So the Gro House is a multi-dimensional company that provides a variety of culinary experiences. I started it in 2020 amidst the global pandemic. The Gro House creates avenues for community empowerment and wellness through food, the redistribution of wealth, and curated events, with our focus being the Black LGBTQI+ community. So we welcome donations mainly from non-Black persons as well to keep our mutual aid efforts going. I also have, I can talk about the Black Joy Box again. So if anybody has, if you know of any Black-owned businesses that would need patronage that way that I could give back to, that would be great. Also volunteers, we're always looking for volunteer drivers for the deliveries, volunteer persons to help shop or pack the groceries. We also do our own events that center the Black LGBTQI+ community in LA as well. I've done a wellness event called Boys to Zen, which is focused on trans masc individuals, and we do stuff like yoga, Reiki, which is also, I guess, a form of mutual aid as well. Again, we share, just stuff we're doing and our feelings. It's very tender queer vibes. But yeah, so you can follow us on Instagram at thegro.house. I'll put it in the chat. And then we have a website, thegrowhouse.co. And all our links are there to donate, to volunteer, to have me cater the private chef events for you as well, pop-ups. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you all. I also want to plug my mutual aid initiative, Mutual Aid Mondays. We focus, again, like I said, on BIPOC individuals, trans folks, the queer community, houseless folks, community fridges. We promote, sustainable engagement with mutual aid. So ongoing support to individuals looking to collect and redistribute, money that we all need and everyone deserves. So yes, that is on my Instagram, which is Superior Murphy. And again, it's called Mutual Aid Mondays. So we're gonna go ahead and get started with some questions from our attendees. So our first question, and any of the panelists feel free to respond. So our first question is, how can individuals do their own mutual aid without getting involved in organizations, or if there are not organizations in their community? Is there a difference between charity versus mutual aid? I can I can start us off. So what I found, thinking about, our very virtual world, mutual aid is very, it's out there on socials. It's easier to be connected to communities that you're not, a part of or necessarily have in-person access to. So just go ahead and go on like Instagram and search, in the hashtag section, mutual aid for certain communities. And then relative to your charity versus mutual aid question, just think, there aren't ties to mutual aid, right? You don't need to be anything. You don't need to, qualify in certain ways, right? It's your community helping you helping your community in the ways that you can. So I like to always think that charity is tied to, those terms and words and people that we don't support us, right? So white supremacy, whiteness, the idea that we aren't deserving of all things and our needs. So I try and keep charity outside of, anything that I do relative to my own mutual aid initiative, but rather using words like solidarity and, community love and all that good stuff. Any of our panelists, think of anything they want to? Go ahead, Kat.
Yeah, so as you say that, I often think of the saying solidarity, not charity, So we're not out here like feeling sorry for each other or ourselves. We're out here giving each other like what we deserve. We're providing for the community because everybody deserves that. Nobody should be without. Like it shouldn't be like this hoarding of resources in one aspect of like, economic standing or like just livelihood, and then like 100 to 0 kind of vibes where people don't have like access to food. That's like wild. So I would say that it's a good feeling to feel like it's like even the term neutral is not like you're giving and not receiving. It's both. Like it's about giving and receiving. So if we can just focus on that and like have a better and greater understanding of just helping each other, that would be great.
Yeah, I can go next too. You pretty much both covered it, but I think kind of what we said earlier, starting small. If you can't find anything like in your neighborhood, in your community that's already doing the work, like starting small, maybe coming together with a few friends who have, the similar desire to want to do something to provide support, but don't really know where to start. And yeah, I agree with Superior in terms of like the charity versus mutual aid. When I think of charity, I also think of like these big organizations and strings attached, like just so many things that with mutual aid, it's just like we're helping our communities because we want to and because they deserve the support. And that's it, no questions asked. So to me, that's kind of the difference. There's really no strings attached to mutual aid. And it can be as something small as, helping one person in your community, or something as big as, these bigger organizations that are able to, have a greater reach.
I mean, one thing that I can say, just to add, I started within restaurant owners here in DC. We used like a WhatsApp chat with other restaurant owners and chefs. And every single time it's like become a perfect platform for all of us to put in any help that might be needed. It's that same starting small with friends where everybody is sort of has a mutual connection. And I think the way I see mutual aid is it's direct help. and it's going directly to those hands, and it's directly impactful, and you feel it in the moment. So it's not like you're just sending it out to space and hoping for the best. You get to see the best. And I think that's what we're all sort of getting at, which is find commonality and find a way to make a change.
Great, thank you all so much. And our next question comes from a fellow organizer. What's the best method of getting contributions as well as getting the word out to people? So within your work, how have you found, you know, what are some of the easiest ways to let people know that you have resources available and ways to help each other, and getting them involved in your efforts if they are in need of support?
Like mutual, like social media, like
Right.
yeah,
So
like
when
yeah,
social media is, you know, not accessible to, you know,
right.
all people. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I would say I use social media mostly to do mine. I haven't really been like in terms of like maybe printing flyers and putting up in places. I actually, know that you pose that question, I'm considering that, like putting mutual aid flyers in cafes and stuff and having people who just walk by see it. That's actually, yeah, we should do that. Because we're living in this digital world now where we are just on autopilot of everything is online because we're on our phones. But you're right, like not everybody has access to social media. So that could be something that we revisit, is like just physical flyers and like handing out flyers. Like people hand out flyers about like annoying stuff, we could hand out things that actually is gonna recreate a better world. Like we need this right now. Like we need mutual aid more than ever now. And we need each other more than ever. So I think that is how we could do it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think for in terms of like what we do for Veggie Mijas, it's a little bit of everything. Like we are definitely more on like the social media and Instagram platform. We also try to create like marketing, like promotional things on like Eventbrite when we create like an event to also kind of spread the word out. We also do try, especially when we do things like food distribution and things like that, to have flyers and like public libraries and like corner store bodegas, and like places that like the community are really seeing it. Supermarkets, things like that. I also have background in like interpretation and translation. So I try my best when I can with the certain chapters to like translate flyers so that we're also having a greater reach, because we also have to think about language accessibility and like, yeah, we might be putting out flyers in the community, but it might be a certain community that has more Latinx, Spanish speaking folks or other languages. So I also think that like keeping languages in mind is something really important as well. And then obviously word of mouth. Yeah, I think like a little bit of everything is really important because not everyone has the same type of access.
I think also too, something like this panel itself is sort of that great tool. So I think partnerships, win-win partnerships that allow us to get into different rooms that we wouldn't necessarily be. I mean, because we're all pretty much, I'd say, covering a large part of the US as what we represent, which is really awesome to see. And at least, and particularly, for Queer Food Foundation or social media, Facebook, Instagram, and then websites. And I think personally, something that I've also seen within my own community is that stemmed from that WhatsApp group, which is using emailing lists. I've also seen some restaurants sort of in town that add like, hey, if you're interested in helping, and then, sort of, they're not huge, I'd say, organizations, but they're definitely groups of people that have come together to create really, really awesome work. So I think any way or any room you find yourself in is also a good opportunity.
Yeah, and I'll just quickly add, with my initiative, we have, I've been really intentional about that idea that not everyone has social media. And so I make a point to take some of our contributions, get that into cash. And then, I'm just outside and I'm driving and I'm asking people what they need and, making sure I put time in my day to say, okay, like if someone says I list these 3 things, I go to the store for them and I drop it off back to them. Because if we think about, accessibility, the odds that you have access to the types of social media and specific connections within the mutual aid space for those who need help sometimes is really low. And so I think it's important to make sure that we remember that we have to step outside of our doors, right? And outside of our, whatever community we live in to access the people that may need our support as well. I'm going to go ahead and pass it to Vanessa. Thank you.
Thank you guys so much for this amazing conversation. And thank you to our listeners and viewers for coming in and hopefully getting some really thoughtful information, insight on how we can support our communities directly on the ground floor. Special thank you to James Beard Foundation for hosting us in this collaboration bi-monthly, and thank you to Bento Box for being one of our sponsors. Please come back and join us for these conversations.
Thank you so much, Vanessa, and all of the panelists for that very lively and engaging conversation. I'm so excited to heard so much more about what you all do, and I'm sure the audience have as well. Yeah, looking forward to the next one in October. Don't forget to sign up for that, viewers, and please visit the James Beard website for more information on our collaborative webinars, and visit the virtual education library where there is a huge backlog of these kinds of talks. That's it for today. Thanks again to everybody who gave their time for this panel and who is in the audience listening and receiving. Please follow all the panelists. Please follow Queer Food Foundation. And if you're not already, please follow the James Beard Foundation. Take care, everybody, and thank you and good day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.